Welcome back. Remember I shared a time when I had an experience of my true self, and it was in the courtroom. And one of the things that happened was I turned from that real self that I discovered, and I saw that everything that I'd previously thought I was an absolute shambles. It was like a broken down shed. It was just cobbled together. It was just so stupid. And it was all made up. There wasn't anything genuine about it whatsoever. It was an embarrassment. And so we can ask, well, what is the point of these things that we're doing? Why meditate? Why go into these as a subject? Well, because who wants to live their life in a completely false identity? And who wants to be associated with random spurious thoughts that you think are yours, that you suddenly feel down, and they drag you, they take you for a ride. And the minute you give it any energy, it adds another one and then another one. So we have plenty of reason to get out of that. And there's a great wonder being the best version of yourself that you could be by overcoming those things and being who you really are. So, where does this journey go? I'll tell you something about it now. When I walked down the lane that day, I didn't realize that the exercise of being the observer, because only the real self can be the observer of fear and spurious thoughts and things. I hadn't realized that it had diminished the body of the egoic to such a degree that now it lost its hold on me. And I walked down this lane, let's imagine it was with me, and then I walked past, and now it was like being out in space. I was still on the earth, I was still me, but now I realized that I was eternal. I was an eternal being. I just felt completely at peace, a peace I don't think I've ever experienced in my life. And I turned to look like this, and you just have to hear what I have to say with this. I can't prove it. And I can't understand it with the mind, and neither will you probably. But I turned like this, and I could see like a red train going off, a cloak, forever. It went forever and ever. And everybody that had ever lived and all of life was in this cloak. And in that moment, I realized that I'd read many times that everything is one thing, everything's connected. But it didn't matter how many times I'd read it or how convinced I was about it. I hadn't really experienced it, so it was like just a piece of information. But on this day, without the egoic situation, gone past it, I could see that everything is connected. And there's a great joy in it all. It was incredible. If I had to paint a picture of it, I remember thinking afterwards, how would you even tell anybody about this? And I remember thinking about pictures painted by Botticelli. If anyone's kind of knowledgeable, just Google Botticelli. And I always noticed, even though he's so good and so famous, that his pictures all seem a bit like, what is this, All symbolic things, all seeming to float around, and they all have some kind of meaning. And of course, if you study Botticelli, you know what these things mean, and there's a story in the picture by its very symbols. And that's what my painting of this experience would be like out of this world and unreal. And another person who painted pictures like that, on a different type of artist, was William Blake, because William Blake also had experiences of being out there completely. And he tried to paint the things that he was seeing. And I can remember before I ever was interested in these things, things about enlightenment and things about the true self. If ever I saw paintings by William Blake, I used to think, what is this, It almost seemed like in one hand, too simple, and yet too absolutely extraordinary, It didn't fit into life, and yet it was really coming from true life, and I didn't realize that until I went into true life. And that's what happened when I was in that lane that day. I just left the mind, all the disturbances of it. And you realize in that moment that you've been around forever. And this mind is only very temporary. This body's only very temporary. The experience of being a human is a very temporary thing. And when we're seeing life through the lens of the mind, we know so little about reality. We get caught up in so many petty small things all the time that it's just not worth it. I remember years ago, Osho, in one of his talks, and he described the mind, and he said the mind is hunger, and the mind is thirst, and the mind is need, and the mind is want, and the mind is always and forever goal orientated. It doesn't matter where you think you've reached, it doesn't matter how much you get, it doesn't matter how far you go, the thirst and the hunger and the need for more and the emptiness, it just all keeps there, because that's its nature. Its nature is lack. Its nature is, I've got to have more. Its nature is restlessness. Its nature is, let's create a drama. It's like a drama queen. So you can imagine all that was gone, and there we were in absolute state of bliss, you could say, blissed out, fantastic. The same can be said about the whole Enlightenment journey, you could say. I don't know whether you're one of these people who's experienced this, but unless we get completely out of this mind situation and completely into what we are, we always seem to be climbing up another hill. Oh yes, I found the answer and I got the key, and we got the key, and then you wake up and the key's fading away, and we think, well, that's a nice piece of information. I'm glad I know that, but then there's something else we have to go for, and it's like as if something will complete us. There's something missing. There's something not there that will complete us. And unfortunately, whilst the mind is involved in this, the mind can never come to completion. It's like as if we're caught in a circle. It's like a ring of our own thoughts or of our own understanding, but we need to get outside of that ring. And that's what I'm saying, see. And then the whole point of being able to understand who you are as the seer, as the observer, as the watcher of these disturbing things, it's fantastic short term. Of course it is, because we get peace for the first time. We start to take things down. I said it in another talk one day. Imagine there's 10 issues in your life, 10 things that keep coming up. You can start picking them off, because as they come up, you just have to be brave enough to just stay there with the painful thought, stay there as the emotions churn, but keep watching. You don't even have to say anything, just watch it. And the more you observe it, the more you're taking it down. Until in the end, you won't need to get to number 10. Usually when you get so far with these things, the whole thing starts to fall apart. And when that falls apart, then you start to see and start to experience who you really are. And this great freedom comes. I suppose the thing I'm trying to get to in all this as well is it isn't a long journey all the way around. You have to do all these different things, exercises, and you have to meditate forever, do yoga forever. You don't need to. We really need to just find out who we are, and who we are, stand up to what we're not. Just stand and be. I remember one day entered into what I call the ironic laughter. A lot of people will understand what I mean by this. And that is that I remember I was just sat at the table one day, and I was just playing patience with the cards, And I had this sense that something was there like that. And I couldn't see it because it kind of moved as I moved. And I thought, that's awfully like me, It was a magical thing, but it was awfully like me. And then it was gone. Next day I was sat at the same table, and it seemed to be a little bit more within vision, but I still moved as I moved like this. And I thought, that's awfully like me. Well, what is this, The next day, it was who I really was again. But now I just thought, I just had this mad realization that everything I'd ever looked for, I already was. but it didn't belong in the mind realm. It can't be found in your mind. It doesn't belong there. And when we discover who we are, we can't help but laugh, because we realize, I have been this all along. It was always there, but it's covered by something, see. The mind in any, even in a religious setting, even in an ashram, even in a you might be a respected kind of spiritual teacher or something like that. If we haven't got outside into that place of emptiness, then there'll always be something else, and we won't be who we really are. We won't awaken to who we truly are. And I'll finish this by saying that when I walked out, and I've had such huge times in this, it's been marvelous. When you walk out and you're away from all the mind stuff, and you're completely just floating, really, existing in who you are, it's like as if, well, what's your name? Well, I don't really have a name. Well, okay, where are you from? Well, I've been around forever. What's your purpose? Where are you going? Oh, I haven't got one. I don't need one. I don't need to go anywhere. I don't need to do anything. It's just so alien to the mind. It's quite unbelievable. Now, this has been a difficult talk to explain these things, because they're inexplicable. And the only thing I can do is shine a little light, point a finger towards something, and encourage you along the way. And that's about as good as it gets, at least for this video. But maybe we'll come from another angle next time, and that might help, might shed a bit of light.